All right, let's try this again. First time was almost an hour long, and that's not a eulogy, that's a biographical documentary. Therese Marie Ellis was born May 20th, 1956 in Inglewood, California, to Larry and Josephine Ellis and her big brother Robert. Her grandmother, Mary Mangiamelli, also lived with them. She would move 5 years later to Whittier, California, and was fortunate enough to have private schooling from kindergarten all the way through high school. After high school, she would learn to endure and level up and just do the right thing when necessary. In July, after graduating, she had gone on a date. And 5 months later, realized that date had implications. Or as they called it back in the 70s, she was in trouble. And had been for a while. In February of 75, she was in a shotgun wedding. 2 months later, she leveled up to be a mother. The next month, she was 19. 5 months later, 5 or 6 months later, she learned to endure when she found out her mother, Josephine, had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And then 3 months after that, Josephine passed away. She was now 19 with a 9-month-old. And in a marriage she didn't expect to be in. Two years later, she found out that, I don't know how to say this, the man she married didn't punish. He hit. And she became a protective mother. And she did something that some women today still have a hard time doing. Because he didn't just spank me, he smacked me at 2 years old. She picked me up and she got us out of there. And got back to California, and in 78, she was divorced as a single mom. And she had to endure. She had to start over, basically, with a child. 2 years later, she met someone, a coworker, who she introduced to me. Now, she had had dates before and introduced me. And this guy, unlike some guys today, got along with him, got along with me, and we had a good time. And I said something I never said before. I said, "Can he spend the night?" he would end up spending the rest of his life with us. In 1981, on August 15th, they got married. The 80s were a very dynamic time for them. It started with just one son. It ended with climbing up the corporate ladder for Peter, moving around, climbing up the socioeconomic ladder as well. So that by 1989, she was now the mother of 3 sons and living in a town that felt like home to her, called Lemoore. They would live there for 30 years. She started off as a housewife, and then she picked up hobbies. She did cross-stitch. She wrote letters to a lot of people. And she also did photography. And then one time she took a class, an EMT class, to be an emergency medical technician, which took her down a path to the second longest job she ever had. It was second only to motherhood, where she was an emergency medical technician for American Ambulance for I want to say 20 years. She helped bring life. She helped trauma victims. She saved lives. And she had to deal with death. And sometimes she brought work home with her. If she had to work Thanksgiving, the post would magically move from where it usually was to our house. By the end of the 90s, she had one high school graduate, one junior college graduate, and a secret that she would keep for 30 years. In 2000s, she had to endure some surprises, and she didn't see coming, but she did, in ways that some people don't endure nowadays. She did, because it was the right thing to do. She also leveled up. In 2007, she leveled up to mother-in-law when her second son, Michael, became the first to get married. And then 3 years later, her baby got married. By about 2015, she was forced to endure again when her husband was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And she leveled up as caretaker, solely as caretaker. And she held on tight. The doctor said 6 months to 3 years. That's what he gave my dad. On the day of the diagnosis, of the third anniversary of the diagnosis, she wept, cried tears of joy, because it had been 3 years, and sleeping, softly snoring beside her, still, was her husband. She endured the death of her father, and her husband was there beside her. She also leveled up to a title she would relish, and it was the Italian word for grandmother, as she knew it, Nani, the name given to her grandmother. "30 years after moving to Lemoore, including a couple of years of heavy convincing from my father, she did something she never thought she would do. She moved to Arizona with her husband and myself. In 2019, where 3 years later she would endure and level up to widowhood on July 1st, 2022, 67 years to the day when her husband was born. After grieving, she didn't have the strength to level up anymore. Because not only did she have all that strength, but that secret she had back in the 90s that she kept to herself, she had been diagnosed with clinical depression. And she carried that in herself for 30 years. So she started to decline. "3 years and 3 months, she leveled up for the final time. On October 3rd, 2025, after not picking up phones and not texting back, the neighbors went and found her cold and unresponsive on the kitchen floor. She had died of a heart attack due to high blood pressure. I was in Honolulu, 4 hours away from getting on a ship to go to Australia, when I got the news. I was on the phone when they found her. And quickly changed plans. She is survived by her brother, Robert and Willie, her 3 sons, Christopher, Michael, and Daniel, and her 4 grandchildren, Charlie, Harvey, Ainsley, and Audrey. And she is reunited with her husband and will not be forgotten, because her life was a lesson of endurance, leveling up, and doing the right thing without ceremony, but because it was the right thing to do at the time with what she had.